Well, hello, and welcome to the best football show. I am Brian Baldinger at Baldy NFL, all over social media, all the different platforms from YouTube to TikTok to Instagram to X, you name it. You can download this app right here to watch this show daily. Just download a free Audacy app wherever you get those, and just like it and subscribe to it. And we're trying to grow this audience. I'll be here today. I'll be here tomorrow, somewhere in New Orleans. I'm heading to go to New Orleans today. And then Friday, I will more than likely be at NFL Films. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'll be out in Los Angeles getting ready to be a part of our pregame show at the NFL Network. Let's talk about Andy Reid, because we should talk about Andy Reid. I was a teammate. I played in Philadelphia, 92 to 94. One of my teammates there was Vi Sikahema. And he played with Andy Reid at BYU. Vi was a running back or kick returner, still the Arizona Cardinals all-time leading punt returner, but a great person, great player. So anyways, Andy Reid takes over for Ray Rhodes in 1999, and after 4 years. And Vi calls me up. We're best friends. We're both starting out in the media. I'm working at Fox. He's working at Channel 10 in Philadelphia. He calls me up when Andy Reid's about to be announced. He says, Baldy, listen, you got to go to Andy Reid's press conference. You're going to have to get to know him for what you do. Why don't we ride over together? I go over to Vi's house. We drive into the press conference, and me and Vi sit through it. And then when it ends, we go behind the stage, and Vi introduces me to Andy Reid. I meet Andy Reid day one, 1999, whatever that was, January, February. And I get my first introduction to Andy. And, he was really, he's just an imposing guy, a guy that came out of Green Bay system and was part of Mike Holmgren's original team there, with, all different, a variety, whether it was John Gruden, Steve Mariucci. There was a whole group of guys that were there. And so I meet Andy day one, and then I get to know him over the years. And Mike Holmgren was his influencer throughout the whole process. He never called plays in Green Bay. He coached the tight ends and he coached the quarterbacks. Best friends with Brett Favre, even to this day. But what really stood out, even from the very first day, and then getting to know him and doing games at Fox, and I was there his first game in Philadelphia in 1999. Announced I was on the sidelines for his first game. I think it was against Tampa, but regardless. And then his second game, I announced the game against Arizona. And what stood out was just his level of organization. His first big decision to make as a head coach is who to take with the number 2 pick in the draft. And in 1999, there were 6 quarterbacks, I believe, taken in the first round. And he took Donovan McNabb. And one of the things he did that year was, back when we had VCRs, before we have what we have now, he would put a different VCR tape in of each quarterback. And each day he'd just have it on in his office, look up to it every once in a while, kind of look at something that catches his eye. Every day he put a different guy in. He kept coming back to McNabb. And it turned out to be the right pick. Donovan McNabb helped take him to 5 NFC championship games in Philadelphia during Andy's 13 years in Philly, from 99 to 2012, and won Super Bowl. And they lost that Super Bowl to New England, down in Jacksonville. And then he goes 4-12 in Philly in 2012, and they decided to make a change. 5 days later, he's the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Clark Hunt goes and picks him up in Philadelphia and takes him out to Kansas City. He's their guy. He's the all-time winningest coach in Philadelphia and in Kansas City. And counting playoff wins, Super Bowl wins, he's won 301 games. I mean, he literally is the 4th winningest coach of all time. He belongs on the Mount Rushmore. And anytime you talk to Andy, whether it's down the field before a game, in preseason, training camp, in production meetings, getting ready for a game, he always, hold on one second, everybody. My mic fell off. Talk with my hands too much. He always deflects all the attention from themselves. And he gives it to his players. He gives it to his staff. He gives it to his personnel people. But ultimately, every one of these decisions are his decisions. Nobody has built a coaching tree like Andy Reid has built in Philadelphia, in Kansas City. Just go through the list of the guys, whether it's Ron Rivera, whether it's Matt Nagy. I mean, you just go through a list of 10 different coaches that he's helped mentor. Personnel directors, Jason Light down in Tampa, all these different guys. The guys that have come out of Kansas City now and have moved on. He learned that from Mike Holmgren, who learned it from Bill Walsh. You got to be a teacher. And ultimately, that's what Andy Reid is. He's a great teacher. Now, in 2017, they're picking with the 24th pick. Alex Smith is their quarterback. Alex Smith took them to the playoffs 2016. But there was Patrick Mahomes in the draft. And I will never forget, that Super Bowl in 2017 was in Houston. It was in Houston, Texas. And I remember going to the media center that year, and walking in with me at the same time was Patrick Mahomes and Lee Steinberg, his agent. And I just remember Lee was talking to somebody, and I had done a bunch of games at Texas Tech for Fox Sports, got to know Patrick Mahomes a little bit in some production meetings. Got to know Cliff Kingsbury really well, going out to Lubbock. And I remember just asking Patrick what he thought about the draft. Like, what are they saying? And he said, somewhere in the second round probably looks like the sweet spot, except that John Gruden, who was coaching at the time, Sean Payton, who was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints at the time, and Andy Reid picking number 24 at the time, all felt like Patrick Mahomes was the number one quarterback in that draft. And sure enough, Andy Reid got his personnel team to move up and trade up from number 24 to 10 to select Patrick Mahomes. And they got to 10 because their intel said picking at 11 is the New Orleans Saints, and Sean Payton was going to take him at 11 and be the heir apparent to Drew Brees in New Orleans. And if that happened, maybe Sean Payton is still in New Orleans, and maybe he's winning Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. We don't know. But Kansas City jumped up to 10, and it was the right move. And here we are. And so let's talk about the two quarterbacks, because I have known Mahomes since those days at Texas Tech. In fact, I think I announced his first start at Texas Tech. And you could see the arm talent. Every single analyst, when he was coming out of the draft in 2017, said his mechanics have to get cleaned up. He's all over the place. He's just running and scrambling, and, he can't play a frenetic pace. A lot like what they said about Caleb Williams this year. But you could tell, his first start was 2017 against Denver, and he beat the Denver Broncos that day. And then he didn't lose to the Denver Broncos again until last year when they turned it over 5 times. You talked to Cliff Kingsbury about him. The first time he saw Patrick Mahomes do anything live was a state basketball tournament when he was coming out of East Texas, Whitehall High School. Or not Whitehall, but, out there in East Texas. And he was draining threes. I saw Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid at an awards ceremony in Atlantic City a few years back. And I remember walking through, and I'm a presenter, and we're presenting awards to different people. I got to present an award to Aaron Donald that night. But I'm going back here, and I see Patrick, I see Andy. And I start talking, for some reason, about safeties to Patrick, how he reads safeties. He goes, if you really want to see the best of what I can do, Baldy, Andy Reid should put me at safety. I would lead the league in interceptions or something like that. And Andy just looked at him going, no, Pat, you're staying a quarterback. But the point is that Mahomes feels like he can beat anybody in anything. The competition for anything never really ends. That's how he's wired. put a basketball in his hand, go let him play safety, go put a baseball in his hand, go take him to the state fair, let him throw darts for the biggest teddy bear. He's going to come out as a winner. That's just who he is. On the other side, I remember when Jalen Hurts came out of Oklahoma. And the Eagles were picking in the second round with the 53rd pick. And they had Carson Wentz, who had been taking them to playoffs. And, their team went to the Super Bowl 8 years ago. And, he got hurt against the Rams that year. And, he had to go watch Nick Foles take the team to the playoffs. And it hurt. But I thought, Carson was going to get healthy and all that. And he came back from it, and he was good. He had some injuries. He had injured his back and came back from the knee injury. But I thought with the 53rd pick, why not have an insurance policy? And why not take Jalen Hurts? Nobody thought he was a first-round pick. But I love the fact that Jalen Hurts started at Alabama, started as a freshman. And I remember his freshman year, the big game one weekend was Alabama and Texas A&M, who had Myles Garrett, a lot of great defensive players. And I did Alabama and Texas A&M. I believe it was 2000. I forget the year, but it was Myles Garrett senior year, and he had a high ankle sprain. And I remember watching Jalen Hurts for the first time live, and I thought, I didn't know if he was a great quarterback. I knew he was a great athlete. Like, he could run and scramble, and nobody could catch him. I knew he had great speed, and he had great awareness. And then, he gets benched, in a game, and Tua Tagovailoa comes in for him, and Jalen Hurts stays the next year and doesn't transfer, like a lot of kids do now, when Tua beat him out. And not only did he stay, but he stayed and he got his degree from Alabama. And so he was a graduate transfer to Oklahoma. And he went and he started and he won his first 8 or 9 games there at Oklahoma. He was a Heisman Trophy, contender that year. And with the 53rd pick, I said the Eagles should take Jalen Hurts, and they took him. And it turned out to be a great pick. Carson Wentz kind of went wonky on the Eagles, and his career kind of nosedived, and Jalen's just rose up. And then in Philadelphia, I've gotten to know him. He works out at a certain player's home. I'm over at that house a lot. I got to meet him, talk to him. All he wanted to do is ask me about, Mike Vick and Randall Cunningham, guys that came before him in Philadelphia. And he was very interested in those stories and what kind of people they were. And here he is, on the doorstep of his second Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. And then, finally, I wanted to take a moment to talk about my favorite matchup in this game. And while we're all going to watch the two quarterbacks, and there's a lot of good matchups in this game, the matchup that, and you can have Trent McDuffie against A.J. Brown. That's certainly a good matchup. He might travel with them in that game. I'm really intrigued by Trey Smith and by Jalen Carter. And both players dropped in the draft. Trey Smith dropped to the 6th round. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, going to Tennessee. But he was afflicted by blood clots in his leg when he was there. And a lot of teams, and I've talked to certain teams when he was coming out that year, said, we took him off our board. He's too much of a medical risk. Well, that was true. Blood clots can do that to people. Kansas City used a 6th-round pick on him to basically take a flyer, and we'll just see. If the blood clots are a problem, we'll grin and bear it, and we'll move on. Well, I think he has started every single game since they drafted him 4 years ago, right next to Creed Humphrey, who they took in the 2nd round. And it's the foundation for one of the best offensive lines in football. Jalen Carter, when he came out 2 years ago, was thought to be the best player in the draft, the best talent in the draft. And, he was involved in an incident after they won their national championship. And, there was casualties. It wasn't caused by Jalen Carter, but he was out racing his car. Something happened to the other car. And, he fell from the first pick all the way down to, I think, the 9th pick. Jalen Carter is a great talent, and he really exploded this year. And he's a guy that you almost have to double team every year, every play. And they did last week. Washington basically double teamed him every play in the AFC Championship game. But last year, Kansas City played Philly, and Philly won the game 21-17. And Jalen Carter played a little bit more than half the snaps. I think he played 48 of the 80-something snaps. But they had Fletcher Cox then. They had Milton Williams. They had a bigger rotation than what they have now. So he played for Fletcher at left defense tackle, and he played right defense tackle. But he lined up a bunch over Trey Smith last year, and there was a lot of one-on-ones. And I would say it was a 50-50 split. Let's say they had 10 plays where they went head-to-head. There were some plays that certainly Trey Smith won. There were some plays that Jalen Carter won. Jalen Carter's a better player now. I think Trey Smith is going to be the highest paid offensive guard in football when he hits free agency this year, whether Kansas City does it or some other team. And I've talked to other teams that say he's their number one free agent on the board right now. But that's my favorite matchup this year. Jalen Carter largely plays over the right guard right now. They will double team him in the run game, one-on-one in pass protection. There will be times when Creed Humphrey will go to the left to help out the left guard Caliendo. And so you're going to get some one-on-ones. Trey Smith, Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is a beast. Trey Smith is my favorite offensive guard in this league. I can't wait to watch this matchup. And I hope, and I think you will too. Number 65 for Kansas City, Jalen Carter, number 98 for the Eagles. Just keep an eye on that. Go inside the pits. You'll be entertained. That's been the best football show. I look forward to talking to you sometime tomorrow, probably from New Orleans. And we'll get further into this game, into this matchup, and some of the fun things to talk about as we get ready for Super Bowl 59.